Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week the Sunday World. Well, a couple minutes past the half hour, but timelines are all perfect no matter where they are on the clock.
Right.
That's
Yes, always perfect. And that's an expectation that really is helpful.
yeah. Yeah. So let's just jump right in, shall we?
Why not?
Yeah, one of the things we started talking about last week, and it was just something, I don't even know how we evolved to that. It was just all the stuff we've been seeing, right? All the things, all the things that have been triggering us, right? When you turn around and look at them, they really come from failed expectations, right?
Right. They stem from an expectation that you either hid from yourself or you didn't recognize it or you felt was legitimate.
Yeah. And in talking about that, it's like the more you talk about it, the more you realize there are layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of expectations. Like we expect to get up in the morning. We expect that our bodies are going to stay solid in the solid state that they're in, right? We
Right.
we expect we'll be able to do blank, right?
And that the sun will come up
Mm-hmm.
and that it'll move across the sky and then there'll be nighttime.
Uh-huh.
And we expect that we'll breathe in and we'll breathe out.
Right.
And we'll expect our eyes will blink.
Yeah. And that our heart's going to beat and that our lungs are just going to breathe. And yeah. And that's all stuff that we have running, like, an autopilot at all of these different levels. So those are just the basic functionality expectations that we've created. And that's
Right.
part of the creation of this density, right?
Right.
Is creating through expectation. However, that's where we insert the ego all the time.
Right. Well, and in ways that almost are like taught,
Mhm.
like you get married, you expect a relationship, and then that comes along with its own expectations.
Right. Like, oh,
And
what you expect from a relationship or in a
that,
relationship. And then you expect it to last forever and you expect it to fill all your needs and like so much burden that we put on things through all those expectations.
right. And I mean that's just, but I mean as a kid, it's like you do something, you sacrifice yourself for someone and you expect something in return,
Right. Right.
and you don't always get that. You don't always get that, and sometimes you get the opposite of that, and your reaction can't be honest to the set of circumstances because of the expectation you had.
Right. Right. Good morning, Sandra. Yeah. But that's really what sets us up for all of our disappointments. All anything that we have felt disappointed in, that we have felt abandoned in or betrayed in or whatever, all come from expectation, which expectation is actually an ego energy, right? It's
Right. Well, and something that hit me over the weekend, and I was looking at a little bit more this morning before we got on, is the law of attraction. And I really feel like so much plays on expectation is that you set the expectation and you create that way.
mhm,
And I think that that's where the disconnect is when people say, "Oh, well, it doesn't work for me." It's because they literally only are looking for creating through the expectations, not with the energy of this has already happened.
well, exactly, because it's like when you just know it is done, when you just know it is done, you have no expectations because you know it's already done, right?
And you behave as if it's already done
Right. And
versus
yeah,
waiting and oh, well, when this happens, then I'll do this, or when this
right,
happens, then I'll do this. Right.
right. Or I have to have this process of this happening, right? That's what we think is we have to make this a process
Right.
for it to be created. And it's funny because I was thinking the same exact thing, of course, about expectation has to do with a process where creation is simply being and knowing it's done, right? Because we have no time and space. It's all an illusion, right? It's all an illusion and it's simultaneously created and destroyed at the same time.
Which, a little shameless plug here, when in all these courses we do, we talk about when we do our meditation is living from the place where that is already our truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. That is taking all expectations out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and
And
expectation really goes hand in hand with like anticipation, right? Like, which means that in the mind, it hasn't happened yet. Expectation is what I expect to see, what I expect to see in the future, right? Or what I
right,
expect to see from this, or what this, because when we say what I expect this relationship to look like, right? It's saying in my definition and in my experience, this is what I expect, this is what I am hoping to create
right.
through these boxes, right? And this is
Right.
what I'm
And rules. And I always think of like programming, for instance, if this, then that. So that's an expectation.
Mhm.
If this happens, then this happens. Or if this happens, I'll feel this, which then I'll allow that because I feel this,
Right,
which immediately sets up that place of an expectation in my mind fills a need.
right,
And if we just already acknowledge that we have everything and that we don't need anything, where do expectations fall in all this?
right,
Nowhere.
right. And we attach emotions to expectations. Yeah, and that's a big one. Well,
Right.
look at how I can't tell you over the last 10 and a half years that I've been doing this professionally, how many people have come to me like, when am I going to meet my soulmate? Or when am I going to meet my twin flame? And the expectation is, well, that's just going to make everything complete and done and blissful, and that's it. And I always laugh because I'm like, well, guess what? I'm your soulmate. Everybody you know is your soulmate in different ways.
Right.
We're all in agreement that we play certain triggers and reflections to each other because we're all the same anyway, right?
Right.
So there's no like mystical soulmate that is out there that, blah, blah. It's like, and it's the same thing with the twin flame, but we're not even going to talk about that today.
No, no.
Want to talk about freaking mountains of expectations that we put to that. But but it's this thing of like what I tell people is when you don't need to. Like what you are actually asking is when I'm going to have that relationship where it's easy and it's wonderful and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, when you don't need to, because then you have that relationship with yourself, right?
Right.
Then you don't have the expectation of somebody else filling that hole, right? Of
Right.
I am less than whole, so therefore I need a relationship to make me that way. And it's so funny because how many people I've talked to in the spiritual community who are like, oh yeah, I've spent years working on myself and I'm really happy with myself. But when am I going to meet that person? Like,
Right. It just negates everything they just said.
I know. Because then it's like, well, okay, obviously you're not ready yet because you're still looking to find them, which means you still feel like there's an expectation of like that's a hole they're going to fill or it's going to make you a better person because of it.
Right.
And the key is to get to that place of knowing I already am whole. I already am that person. I already have that bliss. I'm already allowed to embody that bliss. And if somebody comes along or not to share it with, great. You know,
Mhm.
we have
Right.
so many expectations about what coupling is supposed to be like.
Right. Right.
And I think part of that is it goes back to what we've been talking about with the whole masculine energy and all that kind of stuff. But it's like part of that is still the externalization of masculine and feminine energy, and that one needs the other to be complete versus we already have that inside of us, both of them in completion.
Right.
And all we have to do is recognize it, allow that integration, and then just being it.
Right. Right. Which,
Then everybody you meet is your soulmate in that respect, because they're just going to reflect the same energy back to you.
right. And you just said a word that made me start thinking. You said allow, and along with that goes the trust,
Right.
which expectations are
Not trusting.
exactly that manifestation of lack of trust.
And that goes to a collective level as much as it goes to an individual level, right?
Right.
I mean, I found that poking around with somebody else that we know on Friday, I think. I told you we had a share, and it ended up being all about expectation at this collective level that was a big surprise. And I don't even know how we got onto it because it wasn't something we were like starting to talk about, but it just sort of, I think we were talking about elderly parents, right? Who are more afraid to die than they are to like live, they're more
Right.
afraid to die. They're more afraid to die than they are to live a miserable life here.
Right. Right.
And I said, it's funny because I believe in our generation, there are many, many, many of us who have parents who are there, who are so cranky about being here. They complain incessantly. Everything's miserable. Everything's horrible. And yet they're more afraid to die than they are to be miserable living here, which
Right.
is such a confusing thing for us, right? I'll get to the
Right.
expectation thing in a minute, but it was interesting that so in tapping into that, when we started talking about it, I said, it must be, and saying this, how many times I've said it about how many people I know who all have parents who are the same in the same place, right?
Right.
Obviously, it's a collective thing, right? And we complain about, give me a second here, but in our judgment thing, we get irritated and frustrated about look at those who are in power. It's all the older generation. They won't just retire and let go and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, it's all the same thing because they won't let go. They won't let go of being here, right? So then we're like, so what are they missing that they have
Right.
to like cling on to some space, right? And it turned into this whole looking at expectation of, okay, well, we came here to hold a certain space, which was really, it was really a powerful share. It was like, we came here to hold a certain space and we did it. And now we know like we're done, but we don't want to let go of that because we're afraid it's going to fall apart if we let go of it. Right.
Right. Right.
And those of us who are in the next generation are like, no, we're here to evolve that. And we can't do that until you freaking let go. Right.
Right. Right.
And yet at the same time, what I discovered when we went out there was we had this fence around that generation, like, oh, wait, we want you to go, but we're really thinking, do I want to step into that? Do we want to be responsible for that? And then there were all these expectations that went both ways. It's like, well, if we stay, then we have to do this and we have to stay in power. And then, and you have to do that. And then you have to take care of us. And like it was just all these expectations. And it was so tightly intertwined and knotted and it's suffocating, right?
Right.
So we started doing this, let go, okay, we commit to stepping up into what, because you know what, it was so funny. I was looking at the collective of this next generation of us, right, who are in our mid adulthood or whatever, and it was like, oh, we've been having sort of a good time. And we sort of perceive it to be hard to have to like do what's next.
Right.
And it's like, and so the longer we can prolong them, like that we can be a victim to them, not like, letting go, right? The more we can just hang out and have fun because we think that it's hard to do what's next. It was like all these expectations. And then it was like, well, then you need to do this. And well, then you need to do this. It was back and forth. And it was just, wow, it was so powerful. Like to start cutting all those cords and be like, okay, no, y'all can finish up. It's time for us to do this and we can have fun doing it. Like, of course we can have fun doing it. We can just make it fun and make it easy, and it doesn't have to look a certain way for it to be impact, have impact and all that kind of stuff. But it was all of these things that hold us back collectively were all expectations of what a certain generation is supposed to be doing, what the next generation is supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed, like if I do this, then oh my God, the if then, so many if then.
Right. Yeah.
And it was after you and I had had our talk and after I got off that, and I was like, wow, that was really powerful and indicative of a really big collective expectation. And we put so
Yeah,
much weight.
right. And we haven't even talked about, we haven't even gotten to that place where we talk about the collective expectations. We were just talking individual up until this point. So you add
Right.
the collective on top of that. And I mean,
Yeah, I know. I know.
it kind of leaves me speechless.
Right. Yeah. When we jump to that level, it's like, well, then, because we have so many things that are built up on that. Michael says, allowing the letting go of the collective expectation to allow the collective trust. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a big one because that's why we don't trust individually, is because we don't trust collectively.
Right.
It's
Well,
all
and I mean, look at the state of everything right now. It's so apparent that I mean that echoes. It reminds me of, dropping the stone in the pond, and it
well,
just
it's because
ripples.
that's why things are collapsing, is because nothing's really getting done. There's this power play of expectation between different collectives that are embodied here, right, to do different
Hmm.
things, going, like going, and it was just like, wow, so apparent. So now we just need to cut all those cords. And everybody
Right.
needs to put on their their big people panties, their big God goddess panties, and say,
Right. And we don't mean depends.
that's right. And say, you know what? Um, yeah, like actually, and when we get to that place of no expectation and simply, you are what you are what you came here to be. There's that creation without
Right.
expectation.
And that perfection in every moment, add that in.
And
I
when we
mean,
stop thinking, and what are expectations? Oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And we think of burdens and like, oh, I have to put all these things on my plate. And oh, if you're not doing this, then I have to do it.
well,
Think
and
about how
then,
much,
role obligations. I mean, it
which are
just,
expectations. Yep.
right. Yep.
Yep. And if you think
Yeah.
about,
Any obligation is an expectation.
right, right. Oh, and it feels so heavy when you start talking about that, right?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, so how do then the question is, and how do we change it, right? It's simply, it is all of the stuff that we've talked about. It is like letting, like it's trusting, it's being present, right?
Right.
Be just what you're being guided to be right now. And when you do that from the inside, it's letting go of, so many things that are not in the present, which are the expectations, right? And the
Right.
obligations and the burdens and all that kind of stuff. Um,
Well, and of course, another shameless plug is forgiveness plays a role in that. Forgiving yourself
that's what I
for,
was like. I was gonna just say something about the program and I can't remember what it was. Thank you for catching that as it flew out of my head.
yep, yep. Moving beyond this starts with forgiving yourself for allowing the expectations and creating the expectations and then creating through expectations.
Yeah. Well, we do. I think, and in the forgiveness course, we do have one element about disappointment. And what's disappointment?
An
Expectation.
expectation. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that was the other part, was when I saw that out there in that share, it was like, okay, so let's incorporate then the apology, forgiveness, acceptance, embracing love and gratitude for all the lessons that we have created through these,
Right.
expectations, through these burdens, the perception of burdens, and pulling at each other and antagonizing each other. And let's just come to gratitude with them and have them complete. So now everybody's free to just be the part that they are.
Right.
And it's like, I was like a
Right.
big breath of fresh air.
Right.
It's like when you have like being bound up in a harness or something, and then just like freed of it, going, wow, I didn't realize I was dragging that 4,000 pounds behind me
I
with this
know.
harness.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and you multiply that by collectively, and that's intense.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, so, the key I think is for us to look at whenever we think we're disappointed, whenever we think we're disappointed, that's a trigger for us to turn around and say, so what was my expectation here?
Right. Right.
And you know what? We have so many roles in expectations, right? So going back to what you said about marriage, right? So when we have everybody has expectations about when they get married
Right.
and what that looks
Right.
like.
And what's equally powerful is each one coming into the marriage has their own version of expectations.
Right. Right. And even though you think you're always on the same page, I mean, I can't even tell you, I've known so many people who have gotten married, somehow never really talked about the kid thing and realized after they got married, like one person wanted kids and one did not.
Oh,
And you're thinking, I think that was an
did that not
important,
ever come up?
yeah, was that just nothing that you get, or a lot of times it's like one partner thinks, oh, well, the other one will change their mind later
Right.
on, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what happens more times than not. And then they realize, oh no, they were serious about that.
Right.
Pretty-
Right.
Then that causes a lot of contention, but that's a pretty big expectation for some, right?
Right.
The expectation of fidelity, of committing their life to being with you, to
Well, and to have the same priorities.
have the same priorities, to have the same visions, to have the same goals, right?
And to communicate the same, and you can get into the whole love language thing about this is the way I express love and this is the way I expect to receive it.
Expect, right?
Right. Right.
And then we're let down, or we were disappointed, or we feel abandoned, or we feel like not
Right.
good
Well,
enough.
and you can take that to any relationship. You can take it to
Oh yeah,
the family, the family unit. You can take it to friendship. You can take it to uh, you know pretty much any relationship that you have. It comes with a set of expectations because that's what defines it as what it is.
yeah. So Michael says,
It is about not being fulfilled of why we create expectations. Is there a way to allow it?
not sure I understand the question.
Is it about not being fulfilled?
Well, expectations have to do with externalization.
And in my opinion, it stems from perceived need that we have personally.
Yeah.
The fulfillment to allow that.
Is a way to allow.
Well, in my mind, fulfillment means that that's giving you something that you don't already have.
Right. And this goes back to, of course, that everything's inside of you. And
Right.
it's all that externalization of, well, look at how we romanticize relationships, right? Remember what was the movie, the whole you complete me, the Tom Cruise movie, that I really love that line. They said, oh, that was just so romantic. About
I don't know.
it was a sports movie. It was a big one. I can't even think of the name of it. But anyway, that was like a big line. And everybody's like, oh, you complete me. Like for somebody to say that to somebody else, and it's like, oh no, that's so much burden and expectation for somebody to say that.
Right.
It's funny because, you know, I guess, well, you and I have talked about this, right? One of the things, one of my triggers that I have actually been working um, very actively on is the feeling of somebody being too needy on me. Right?
Right. Right.
And like, it's funny because people don't think that's a feminine trait or like, and it's like, no, I get nothing from somebody being, in fact, I talk about when my kids were little, it was like I felt suffocated when they were babies because I was like, oh my God, they're so dependent. And then as they got older, I really, like, not that I didn't love them, but as they got older, it's like I love them more because it's like, okay, they can do things on their own. And there's a certain level where it's like, oh, it's suffocating. So to me, that's not romantic at all. Somebody said you completely, I would be like running in the other direction. But,
Well, I mean, and that does, like you said, what a burden. And there's so many relationships that become lopsided or one-sided because of that, and one is expected to always be the strength or the the rock that the other one just dumps on and relies on, and it at some point I would think would become that burden. And as we've always said, it's just a question of two people coming together in their completeness and allowing the the
during the journey.
yeah, and the pleasures and everything to resonate within that completeness,
Right.
to create the bliss that there's nothing's created that isn't already there.
Right. It's a reflection of what's already there.
It's
Yeah.
just a shared experience.
Yeah. And so when we can take that every interaction as a reflection of what's already there, it's reminding you already have that.
Right.
Right. And so to me it was like, well, so why am I so triggered about the neediness, right? So where am I like needy underneath everything that
Right.
I judge myself about, right? Or I believe that, or that I need
Right.
to have something. So there's a lot, and it turns all back around yourself. But when
Right,
we
which, another shameless plug coming up is it all reflects back to that self-responsibility. Expectation is saying, no, I'm not going to be responsible for this.
right,
I'm going to put that all out
I'm gonna put it
here.
on you, on somebody else.
Right. And I'm not going to be responsible for creating that for myself.
Right, right. Whether it's individual or generational or whatever, it's like,
Or collectively.
yeah, collectively. It's
Yeah.
so it's so powerful to take that. Yeah, self-responsibility launches in September.
Right.
as we launch, just launched forgiveness for this month. So
And Michael, going back to the external showing what's going on internally, what's creating the internal unfulfillment that is creating the external expectation? Is there a root solution that we can allow to solve this internal dilemma? Well, and I think that all comes back to that self-responsibility that we just talked about.
yeah, it truly is, because it has to do with, first of all, the recognition of nope, nope, and nope. The expectation is mine because that belief there's something. So then if I have that expectation, where am I lacking? Where do I believe I'm lacking?
Right, right, exactly. It's almost like an expectation is almost looking in the mirror and saying to your reflection, I expect you to do this for me.
Mhm.
And then letting go. And it's like, how is that ever going to come? Because that mirror reflection is you.
Right. So it's like, okay, well, I got to put on my big girl panties and go take care
And
of that
go
myself.
take care of that.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And and by the way, the funniest thing about that is the more we get in that energy, the more then it reflects back to us and other people, which is opposite of what we think is going to happen, right? So we think, well, if I do it all, then nobody's going to do it for me. No, actually, the more that you're comfortable, not in the martyrdom of doing it all, saying I have to sacrifice myself to do it,
Exactly.
but in the
Yes.
energy of I have the capability of covering all of it. I have that wholeness.
Right.
I'm there. I've already created it. When you do,
And then it becomes you come together to share.
yes, yes. And
And
then it's a
that's
natural thing that it will reflect back to you because guess what? There is no expectation. It's already been created, right? So say I've created this situation. I've created, and every time I've ever done that, that has been the most powerful creation, the most powerful kind of creation when I go, yep, it's done.
right. Right.
And I don't put any more thought to it. I don't put
Yep.
any more anything to it. It just then when I truly allow myself to stay in the heart, stay in that presence, in that creation, and know it's done, whatever that is.
Right. And that shifts your vibration.
Yeah.
And you live from that place of the vibration where in my world that is done.
Yeah. And then
It
what
exists,
happens
it's
is
complete.
then people and things and situations all show up. Michael says, can you give an example of self-responsibility reflecting back? Well, this is what we're talking about right now.
Right. I know. I think the delay's catching
Yeah.
up.
So, because then what happens is people just start to show up and things start to happen and things come
Right.
together and they do support you, right? Not because you have the expectation, but because you know it's already been done. There's a difference, right?
Well, and an example is if you have an expectation of your mate and you say, I really want this attention from you. And then you meet the disappointment if that doesn't happen. And then you turn around and say, okay, then I'm just going to create that for myself. And you feel that perceived need within yourself of, I don't need that external validation to make me feel loved. I love myself. And you start living from that place of being fulfilled in that, then they see that in you and then they participate in that with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you're not doing that, when you're expecting somebody else to do it, you're shutting yourself down, right? So think about doors, right? Think about doors in your heart. So if you're not giving yourself that nourishment or
Right.
that love, right? And you're shutting those doors, well, then somebody reflecting back to you is gonna be like, well, the doors are shut, so how can I even give that to you? So then all those energies and things creating around it will show you that those doors are shut, right? Which means that you won't get that attention, you won't get whatever, you'll be chasing after it, and it'll be going further away. Why? Because you have the door shut. Like you're like denying that within yourself. And when you turn it around and say, how about I focus on myself and coming to a place of love? And by the way, the more you come into a place of love and nourishment for yourself, the less you even care whether other people are giving it to you. But then that's when people like give it to you, which is like not logical to the ego, right?
Well, and just something that you said made me think it's the opposites. It's not opposites attract, because if you look at what we perceive as what's opposite, is they're actually the same.
Right. Right. Or what you're denying yourself, or what part of yourself you're denying, right?
Right.
And that's what gets attracted to you because it's saying, hello, the hello. Here I am.
Okay, so I think that Michael,
Yeah,
that
Michael said,
answered
okay,
his question.
cool. Yeah.
That's good.
Yes. And so it is a very specific. So this is really sort of like nuts and bolts behind things like law of attraction and things like that, right? This is like why we create better in some instances than others, right? It's like what we put around it.
Right.
But like I said, every time I've simply known something was created. And it's funny because I look at some of the things that I have been putting out there to create, and they've all sort of come together in some big massive flood in the past month in many ways, and it's like it's almost breathless. But it was like funny because when I had to think back or I had to like let it sit for a while, luckily I journal, right? So as I was thinking, oh wait, I was journaling about this like, I don't know, 8 months ago, and I was like setting a creation. And then I always put in what I have been putting in for probably the past year is I open my heart after I like decide on a creation of some sort that I would like to manifest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I say, okay, well, I open my heart to allow all possibilities in the manifestation of this creation. And that's my commitment. And when I open my heart, right, means that I'm not expecting, I'm just allowing, right? That's a different energy
Totally different. Totally different.
Because when I say I'm allowing it, I'm opening my heart to all possibilities to allow it to manifest here, means that I know it's already created. It's a matter of me
and
opening.
The trust is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And so like when I started looking back, like, oh wait, I asked for this, or like I look to create this and I look to create that and I look to create that. And I totally just sort of put it out there and it was there and I forgot about it. And now I'm like, wow, this big thing that just was breathless for me. I was like, oh, look it, this addresses all of those things. And I would have never, put it together or been able to manage it or had expectations around it. So now it's a matter of, okay, well, now it's created itself. Now I have to make sure I have no expectations around its creation, like its existence, my reality kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And so, the newest thing that my husband and I have gotten to is every day we just say, bring the best of me today, the best of me to the table today. That's all I
Right.
can, right? Is bring the
Right.
best of who I am today, in authenticity. And I commit to that,
Well,
whatever
and
that
if
was.
you said the word authenticity, and that right there precludes expectations,
Mhm. Right.
because being your authentic self means I come with no expectations.
And nor do I take any from you.
Right.
This
Right.
is who I am. And this is what I am right now, where I am. And I'm okay with that, whether you're okay with that or not.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you though, it's, uh, 12, 13 years in the making of doing conscious work on myself to be able to do that. That's a lot. It takes a lot because we're
Right.
not used to doing that in any kind of
Well,
relationship.
and I believe that we work through things at levels,
Mhm.
as as we trust and allow this, then new issues arise or new experiences arise that then, I don't want to say tests us, but you know checks to make sure that we've really let go of things and that we're really trusting. It's like,
Oh yeah.
okay, if I trust at this level, can I trust at this level?
Right.
Or
Right.
if I trust at this level, can I trust at this
It's
level?
like we push ourselves further.
Right.
Here's a little bit of a bigger diving board, a higher diving board, or higher cliff.
Right.
Can you jump off of this one?
Right. And and again, another shameless plug, but that's, I think, the beauty of our courses
Yeah,
is you go through it once and you go through it from where you are, and that's why you get course life access to it, is because as you move through and you trust and you allow and you lose expectations, the next time you go through it, it's at a whole different level.
well, this month, the one we're launching this month on forgiveness is a perfect example. So we did the pilot, which was the pilot for the whole program. So we were testing the waters back in February on forgiveness, right?
Right.
So, like, we were thinking, oh, okay, we'll have what were we thinking? We will have a month off because all we have to do is move the course over into the program, blah blah blah. And then what? Like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, you and I were talking. We're like, we've changed in making this program, right? We've
Right.
changed in the 6 months that since we created it, right? And the forgiveness.
Absolutely.
So we looked at it and I was like, yeah, it was really powerful. And it's going to be really different now if we do it again because we've gone through all this other stuff. And so we decided to do the whole course again, which is what we're doing. So
Right. Which I
the
was really,
first time we're going to get the bonus of having the access to the new stuff is is the new stuff so they can take a whole new course on the same stuff all over
I
again.
know, and in doing the course, it's amazing the difference between where I was in February and where I am now.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's
Lifetime.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. So, and so you're right. So as we go along and as we do let go of different expectations of ourselves and we do become more into that presence and more into that, creation mode of knowing it's already done because we are the infinite
Right.
consciousness of creation.
Right.
So, there are things that I've been pushed to, like now it's sort of like these tweaks, and you and I are both looking at that, like the power of creation in different ways right now, right? That it's like the stuff we've denied of ourselves, that as we
Mhm.
integrate that is a completely different level altogether. So then it's like, okay, well, guess what? We'll be cycling around to do again. You
Yep.
know?
Right.
So, all right. So today's session we'll do, what do we want to do for our,
Oh. Well, I always like to start with conscious awareness of where we're allowing expectations
To create
control
for
our
us.
creation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
From a place
then,
of, well, because it's like a place of lack when we create from those expectations.
exactly. Yeah.
And how to shift it all to be that instantaneous, infinitely capable creation of presence, right? Of knowing it's
Yeah.
done.
Just remembering. Right.
Yes, remembering how to do that easily and with flow and fun. I just throw all the fun and enjoyment in there, prosperity and vibrant health and like whatever. How to do that all, how to remembering how to do all that,
Right.
free of the burden of those expectations. Yeah.
Right. Right.
All right. I think that was great. So everybody, take a deep breath, close your eyes as we step out of separation back into oneness, and we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, from where we create, and where we experience. All right.
Oh, I could have stayed there all day.
Started out pretty rough for me. It was like, but wait, but wait, but wait, but what? It was like, oh, and then it was like collective and it was individual, and it was like, oh, letting go. It was like so much fear about, but if we don't define what this is supposed to be, then it won't be created. And it's like, no, we've gotten backwards in that, you know? It's like,
Right, right.
you're like, okay, let that be, let that be. So I had to work a little bit about letting that free up. And that's when it calmed down. It was nice. And I was like, yeah, I need to go back to that today and just sort of sit in that.
In the beginning, I saw, um, we always talk about the house of mirrors, but when you have two mirrors that point at each other,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it creates those tunnels of,
Yeah. The
and
infinite.
I just saw that, and that was all the expectations and all, and it was just so overwhelming. And it was like, okay, let's just take expectations out of the equation, and what do we have? And it just, everything just simplified, and it was like, oh,
Oh, that's
what a
beautiful.
relief.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It was huge. So that was a great vibration to sit in.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, as I was like, yeah, nope, it's time to let go of this. I mean, it was well, so I didn't see mirrors, and what I just started, it was almost like I was seeing layers just sort of collapsing themselves, and that's when it got peaceful. Like, so it was the same kind of idea of getting more simplified. It was just not
Right.
visualizing things. Yeah, so more of that, please.
Yes, absolutely.
More of that. And I think the home play for everybody is to just be aware of
Yep.
anything that comes up that would be considered disappointment or whatever.
Step back in observation.
Yeah, and say, what is that I'm expecting
Right.
that
What's the root of that expectation?
that I can fulfill within myself, that I have fulfilled within myself, and I won't allow it yet.
Right.
Right. What a
That I
what a
just
difference how
need
that
to
turns
recognize.
around.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, so thank you everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg, Avagnoni.
signing off with this week's Center World. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.